My name is Victoria Tippins, as most of you know, and I've been attending births for 15 years, and I have 3 kids, and have been a student midwife for quite a few years as well, and have supported a lot of moms in the postpartum stage with baby sleep. And so today we're doing a training specifically on newborn sleep, but I'm also going to spend a little bit of time talking about sleep training for babies a little bit further ahead, like 3-4 months and beyond. And I think that even if you are expecting now and you aren't planning to sleep train anytime in the near future, or maybe you're not planning to sleep train at all, no worries either way. It can be helpful just to kind of understand what those tools are so that when that time comes, you have what you need. Let's begin our training today. I'm going to focus mostly on newborns, but I will talk a little bit about babies when they're in like the 3 or 4 month range too. So I'll kind of clarify where that's going to be. There's a really big difference between a newborn baby and a baby that is 3 months old and beyond. A newborn baby is not sensitive to any kind of sleep association. So like falling to sleep on the breast is not gonna like create a problem. Falling asleep in the carrier or in the car, like that's not gonna create a problem. And potentially though, like when a baby is 3 months old or so, that is when they could develop an association. And so it's just kind of helpful to be aware of that. And that doesn't mean it is a problem, but the baby might be like, your breast is the way I go to sleep, or the carrier is the way that I go to sleep. So if we want to avoid sleep associations, there's a way that we can do that. And I can talk about that later. Right now, I just kind of want to clarify there's a big difference in biology, in development capacity for a baby to do a thing or not do a thing. So in the very beginning, I just want to be really clear that like you can't teach your baby any bad habits, right? You can't. So don't worry about any of that. It's just about like doing what feels good for you and finding the routine that feels good for you. And so this first slide is about the power of consistency. I think that this is a really great way to start in the beginning, is to start introducing predictable pathways for sleep. So what that might look like is after your baby is born, they have no idea when it's daytime or nighttime. They have no clue. And what can happen sometimes is that parents will, like when the baby cries at night, they'll get up and they'll turn the lights on and kind of like move around the house and do what they feel like they need to do. And that can sometimes be a little confusing to baby. So if we just consistently are teaching the baby, hey, at nighttime, we sleep and we stay in the dark. So we're nursing or feeding the baby with low lights. We're using quiet voices. We're not stimulating the baby with toys or music or anything like that. We're just keeping it calm. That will help your baby to balance their circadian rhythms over time. And that can be really, really helpful to be aware of. The other thing that I want to mention is in the newborn stage, until your baby's 3 months old, they're not going to have any kind of routine yet. It's going to feel pretty random when they eat and when they poop and when they, want to wake up and when they want to go back to sleep. Sometimes with newborn naps, they could be 30 minutes or they could be 3 hours. And it's like, maybe your baby takes a 3-hour nap in the beginning of the day and then later in the day, it's like only 30 minutes or whatever. And we just, don't ever know how long it's going to be. That can drive parents a little bit crazy. Like by the time your baby's 3 months old, they'll have consistent nap times. However you do the nap is fine. It'll just be consistent if you want it to be, and the baby will be developmentally ready for that. And they'll be sleeping better at night, and that will feel really, really good. So just recognize like chaos is kind of normal at the beginning. It does get better. As much as you can implement routine now, though, with your newborn baby, you can start to just like set yourself up for if you want to do sleep training or invite more independent sleep around month 3 or 4. If you're having some kind of routine, like before you go to bed, where we do a bath and we do a song and we read a book, right? Like any kind of consistency that supports the baby making like associations to the feeling of like being relaxed and calm, like after we take a bath and things like that. It helps to cue their brain to release melatonin. So that can be helpful. So I would say like be consistent in all the ways that feels natural and doable for you in the very beginning. Trying to consistently teach the baby at daytime it's daytime and nighttime is nighttime. We're not going to turn on all the lights right at the in the middle of the night. And also just to offer a little bit of like a bedtime routine as you feel is natural and works well with your schedule and your daily flow. When you're 3 months old, then you can really kind of implement a more strict schedule with sleep, and you'll have more predictable naps, and the routine will become really, really helpful by then. I want to talk a little bit more about nursing to sleep. So in the first 3 months, like I mentioned before, it is biologically normal, and it's very beneficial for your baby's health for them to fall asleep on the breast. And a lot of people will say, like, you'll create a bad habit, blah, 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 blah. That's not true. We can't create bad habits from letting our babies fall asleep on the breast in the first 3 months. It's not biologically possible. The baby doesn't have the developmental capacity to manipulate you or to create a bad habit. So just allow your baby to fall asleep on the breast if they want to. Milk has higher levels of melatonin at nighttime to support your baby in sleeping. It helps your baby release oxytocin, which also can make them feel kind of sleepy. And all of it is, it's normal. It's very, very normal. Babies wouldn't fall asleep on the breast if it wasn't normal. So we can stress ourselves out way too much by trying to create these strict rules that aren't even aligned with biology. So I invite you to avoid that. Do whatever feels good for you. Don't worry about creating bad habits. When your baby is 3 months old, like I mentioned before, we're just going to go a little deeper into that. This is when it is possible for your baby to create a sleep association to whatever pathway you're giving your baby to sleep. So for nursing, for example, if you are nursing your baby to sleep at around 3 months, they might get to a point where they're like, hey, I kind of want your breast to help me go to sleep and I can't go to sleep without your breast. That's okay. If it doesn't bother you, if you like nursing your baby to sleep, some babies still are able to link their sleep cycles at night and like sleep well at night while they have a sleep association to feeding. Other babies do not, and they might get to a point where they're waking every hour, or 45 minutes or so, like when they have their sleep cycle complete and they need to go back into deep sleep. They might need your boob for that, and that's a lot of work. So that's something that can be avoided, or if it happens, like all 3 of my babies, I just let them create the sleep association. We bed shared until they were like 5 months old or 6 months old, and I was kind of like, okay, I can. I think around 5 months old, they started like needing my boob every hour, and I was like, I think I'm done with this. And that is when we chose to sleep train them, and that's how I did it. So you can break a nursing association. So if you want to just stick with it and let the nursing association happen and break it later, that's okay. It's typically a little easier from what I've heard, because I didn't experience this. I experienced breaking the association, but preventing an association can feel a little bit easier, but you don't have to worry about that until your baby's about 3 months old. So it's up to you. Do whatever you want to do. There's no wrong way. And I think this is really important to recognize. Like if you are planning to bed share, if you're planning to put your baby in a crib, if you're planning to put them in a bassinet, whatever the heck you want to do, there's no wrong way. It's just about choosing what feels best for your family long term. Not every family is a good fit for bed sharing. Not every family is able to like have the routine where both partners are like supporting at nighttime, or maybe the mom is a single mom. And so like we need to just structure things a little differently so that you get the support you need so that you can get the best sleep that you possibly can. And there's no wrong way to do it. It's just about doing what feels right for you. So let's talk about when your baby can sleep through the night, because some people I've heard when the baby's 3 months old, they're like, my baby's not sleeping through the night. And like, why? Like something's wrong with my baby. So it's biologically normal for your baby to need to wake at night for feedings until they're about 5 or 6 months old, or they reach a certain weight, but it could be longer than that. My first was 9 months. I didn't really do much sleep training though until like 9 months, and then she started sleeping through the night. My second was 5 months. He slept through the night at 5 months. Then he would be teething and then he would be up a little bit, or he'd have a growth spurt and be hungry and he'd be up a little bit. So it wasn't like 5 months forever onward, but like in general, like we were sleeping really well around 5 months. My 1-year-old actually had a feeding association that was very hard to break, and we were kind of on and off about it. It was with the breast, and then it transitioned to bottles, and he was like really needing the bottle. And so he would wake up like once in the middle of the night. and wanting the bottle until like a year and a half old. But that mostly was due to my husband and I kind of being lazy about doing the training, having 3 kids under 6. So that was why. But typically around 5 to 6 months old is when babies might start sleeping through the night, especially if your baby doesn't have a nursing association. If they do have a nursing association, they'll probably be wanting to, nurse to be able to link their sleep cycles. So they might be waking up to feed, even though they probably don't need to feed. Babies, like, it just really depends on their weight, but typically at nighttime, once they're 5 or 6 months old, they'll probably only need like one feed, really in the middle of the night, or potentially they won't need a feed. At 3 to 4 months, if you want to sleep train, and you don't have to, but if you want to, this is what I would invite you to do. So first, what we want to do is when a baby starts to like fuss a little bit at night, I would wait a little bit before responding, because your baby goes through cycles of sleep at night where they go into light sleep and then they go into deeper sleep. And those cycles are pretty fast. So 45 minutes is pretty typical for like a newborn sleep cycle. And so that means every 45 minutes, your baby will go into a light sleep phase and they need to work themselves back into deep sleep. If they have an association around 3 to 4 months, that is where probably they go into light sleep and then they'll be like, oh, I need my tool to help me go to sleep. And then they'll wake up, and that's why they want to nurse every hour. For example, when they're 3 to 4 months old. So some of the things that you could start to do even earlier, like 2 months if you want to, is if your baby is sleeping and then they wake up and they start to kind of fuss a little bit, you could just wait before responding. If your baby actually needs you, they'll cry. But if your baby's going and kind of fussing around, they're maybe a little bit grunty, just wait and see if they'll work themselves back down. You could sing a song, put your hand on their chest. It's called Heavy Hands, if you want, to see if that will help them get themselves down. Or you can just wait. Give them an opportunity to see if they can go down. And if they cry and they really need you, then we'll pick them up. The next thing to be aware of is consistency. So we want to, at this point, like I said, at 3 months, so you'll be able to incorporate some consistency. We want to make sure that your baby is following a routine every day that's predictable. And the reason why the routine is so important is because it will help your baby avoid being overtired. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. The other reason why is because like babies thrive on routines. I have 3 kids under 6, and one is 1.5 and one is 2.5. And the boys thrive on routines so much, and they've always been that way. And my kids have a very strict sleep routine. Like 3 kids under 6, everyone's asleep by 7 p.m. because I need that to like survive. And we're very strict about our routine. But if we break our routine up even a tiny bit, it messes everything up. So like, sorry, you guys invited me and my family over to dinner, and dinner starts at 6:30 p.m. Like we eat at 5 and we're going to be home in Bath at 6:30 p.m. Like we are not, you know what I mean? So we have to make that lifestyle change if you want to maintain the consistency. And I highly recommend it. It's so worth it because I get better sleep because of it, and my kids are easier to put down every night because of it. So we have our consistent routines. The consistent routines cue my baby's brains to release melatonin to help them to go to sleep. So like I mentioned before, it's like bath time, a song, brush teeth, right? Like read a book, all those things, pajamas, and turn off the lights, and we go to bed. And we do that all within about a 30-minute window. So when you take the bath, you want to be kind of working your way to bedtime around 30 minutes or within a 30-minute window. The next piece is the environment. So we want to create a calm and sleep-friendly space. So we want to look at temperature. If you know how it's like, if it's too hot or too cold, you can't sleep. It's the same with babies. Babies often get too bundled and they get too hot. So if your baby feels sweaty, you can always take your baby's temperature. That might be why they're not wanting to sleep. There are sleep suits. You can get your baby like a wearable blanket that are bamboo, that are like a little cooling. My babies wear wool ones in the winter, and in the summer they wear like thin bamboo ones. So we want the environment to be like conducive for sleep, like dark, no sound machine, things like that. And then we want to offer your baby opportunities to self-soothe. And this part is really important. If we interrupt every single time our baby tries to go to sleep on their own, we're never giving them the chance to learn how to do that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. The last piece I wanted to share to this is avoiding overtiredness. So when your baby gets overtired, they release cortisol, and that is going to cause them to stress out and wake up, and then it's really, really hard to get them to go back to sleep. So you want to avoid your baby being overtired and instead try to follow that consistent routine so that when it is 7 p.m. and it's time to put baby to bed, we're catching them on a good window instead of kind of like waiting to see when they're sleepy. And as soon as they show us it's time like they're sleepy, then we start the bedtime routine and then it's like too late. Now they're overtired and now they're releasing stress hormones. If your baby's overtired, it'll cause them to fight going to sleep really, really hard. And then once they are asleep, they're going to keep waking up all throughout the night. So that's why consistency and routines are so important. Okay, so we talked a little bit about pausing before responding. We talked about maintaining consistency, sleep-friendly environment, opportunities for independent sleep. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so once you have, this is like the sleep training part. So once you have a consistent routine with your baby, and their baby is 3 months old or above or beyond, and every day they have predictable naps in their normal wake windows, and then at the end of the day, you do your routine, you give your baby their last feed. After that, your baby is already has the association of going to sleep at this time to that routine, and they're not overtired. Those 3 things are super important. If your baby's overtired, don't do sleep training. If you don't have a consistent routine yet, don't do sleep training. Wait until you have all those things on your side. So biology is on your side. Like the baby's brain is releasing melatonin and saying time to go to sleep. You want all that to line up first. Then after that, rock your baby until they're drowsy. So you can just walk around the room, you can bounce on the yoga ball, whatever you do to help your baby be drowsy, but we want to get them to be drowsy without them falling asleep, because we want them to have the opportunity to see if they can develop that independent sleep skill and fall asleep on their own. So once your baby is drowsy, they get heavy, but they're not asleep yet. Go ahead and put them into their cozy sleep space. We have the good environment, the sound machine, the nice temperature. They're in their jammies. Put them in their cozy sleep space and then wait. And there's a few different ways you could do this. So sometimes babies will be really upset that you put them down before they fell asleep on you, and they might want to cry in protest. So I encourage, honestly, dads to be the one to do this, or the person who didn't give birth, if it's other mom, or, I don't know if grandma, someone else can do it, because it's harder often for the person who gave birth, I have found, to be the person to do the sleep training, though you can totally do it if you want. If your baby is struggling with a nursing association and the person who feeds them from their body is the one doing the sleep training, I think that might be a little confusing, because the baby's like, you're the milk person and you're right there in front of me. Why aren't you giving me my milk? So it might be better to have a different person do this. Personally, my husband did all the sleep training. I didn't do that. I gave birth. You can do the sleep training. That's what we decided. So, yeah. And also, I don't want you to do it if you feel overwhelmed. Your baby will feel how you feel in your nervous system. So if you say tonight, baby, you're going to learn a new skill, and I'm going to be right here with you. You're ready for this. You can do this, right? And I believe in you. We want to be in that place. If you're oh my God, I can't do this. This is the worst thing ever. And you're freaking out, your baby's going to feel that. So we want to protect our nervous system. Get noise canceling headphones, put them in and put on some music and let your baby cry. You can sit with your baby, and put your hand on them. So this is the way my husband and I did it. We weren't just leaving our babies alone, in a room to cry for a long period of time. This is very purposeful crying. I think we should always, always, always pick our babies up if they're ever crying. This is the one situation where the baby is protesting because you're taking away their path for sleep and introducing them to a new one. And so we want to only let them cry for a specific amount of time, and also only let them cry if it's within a normal baseline. So I'll explain that. So I'm not saying just aimlessly let them cry. We want to intentionally let them cry for the purpose of developing independent sleep skills, only if they remain within this range. So what that looks like is like first, number one, you're there with them, you put a chair next to the crib, or if you have them sleep in your own bed, you're sitting on the bed, whatever, you have your hand on their chest and you're doing heavy hands. There's some parents who, or some babies who in the presence of the parent, they're just like, you're my person, I want to be awake, like I want to wake up and be with you. And if the parent is there, it might make it harder for the baby. Most of the time, from what I have seen, but my knowledge, I guess my expertise is very limited in this, but what I have seen is that babies often want to like be touched, and the heavy hands can be really helpful. So you can put your hand on the baby's chest and hold your hand there and wait a little bit, and then listen for the baby's change in baseline if they have it. So the cry should be like, wah, wah, wah. That's their baseline cry, right? And maybe they're continuing to do that, and then all of a sudden they go, wah, 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 and it starts to go above their baseline. If that starts to happen, then baby is telling you that they're dysregulated and they need you to pick them up and help them regulate and then try again. So if we're exceeding the baseline, or we're doing this for more than, and I'm trying to remember what I learned from just with my own kids when we were instructed to do this, I think it was 45 minutes. If the baby is starting to learn the independent sleep skills and it's going well, what will happen is that they will start to down regulate. So they will be regulating their own nervous system, and this is them learning how to do that. So they'll have their baseline cry, wah, wah, and then they'll go like this, whatever it is. Like they're making these sounds of like going down, and that's them down cycling and regulating their nervous system. That is really good, and that means that it's working. So even if the baby goes back to like, wah, wah, and you're like, oh my God, my baby's crying, just like stay with your baby, keep your hand on them, and stay relaxed, stay calm. And you might notice that they go back to being like, whoa, and eventually they'll go until they're asleep. And if that certain amount of time goes by, or you are feeling like I cannot do this anymore, I'm having a hard time, or if baby's like really going way beyond their baseline and they're dysregulated, then we pick them up, we try again, or we just try again the next day. So we don't have to force anything. It's just about offering these opportunities. It's amazing, you guys. Once your baby figures out how to do this just one time, sleep is often so much better. I always found like right after we did the first like sleep training and the baby figured out how to fall asleep independently on their own, it's like now they know how to do that and they take that skill into nighttime. It's very, very cool. And they start linking their sleep cycles better and sleeping longer. And so sometimes it takes, let's see how long. It could take about a week of doing this to get to the point where your baby is feeling like, okay, I got this. And you get them drowsy, you put them down awake in their crib, but drowsy, and they just fall asleep on their own without any protest. So you just have to be consistent with it. What is confusing and the problem that often pops up is that parents aren't aligned, caregivers aren't aligned on what they're doing. The person who's doing the sleep training wants to do it, the other person doesn't, or the other person isn't really like supporting that. And so you're doing it all by yourself. And we don't want any of that. Like you need to be a team. If you're a single mama, you might need some support because it can feel like a lot, but it is worth it. And as long as you stay within that normal range of like baby cries, then you know that you're not just letting your baby cry for no reason, but that like they're working on the skill. They're crying, they're protesting, but they're down cycling, which means that they're building that skill. Upcycling means that they're dysregulated. And when we just know that, it's like, okay, you're dysregulated, so now it's not helping, so you don't have to sit there wondering, is this doing anything? Because you'll be able to hear that it's doing something or it's not, and we just need to try again the next time with our baby. So we need to be consistent. Once you get started, don't be like, we tried it for a night or two and now we're giving, or don't like do it some nights and not do it the other nights. You have to be like, this week we are sleep training, and that's what we're doing, and we are consistent in our routines, and we're not doing anything else, and we're going to get the baby to learn how to sleep well. And if you commit to that week of having someone do that every night, it can really, really impact how well the baby sleeps at night. I'm going to pause there, and now we're going to transition to newborn sleep stuff. So everything I'm going to talk about going forward, unless I clarify, because there's a big difference between newborn sleep and like babies that are 3 months old, we're going over newborn stuff now. So now you kind of understand like a little framework for helping the baby to do the sleep training when they are 3 months old or beyond. I did it for my kids all at 6 months, my first at 9 months. So it's not like you have to do it at 3 months, but you cannot do it until they're 3 months. I want to make that really, really clear. There's no purpose. You're just going to like cause your baby to cry a whole bunch and they're not going to learn anything. They're not at an age where they can learn anything from having them like, go through that routine. But after 3 months, they can. So let's talk about preventing overtiredness in newborns, especially. This is really important because like your baby might be fussy and you're like, well, you were just napping. Like, do you really need a nap again? And the answer is yes, they probably do, because their nap windows or their wake windows are so short, like typically under an hour. And so that means that if your baby is awake, they're probably not going to be awake for very long in the newborn stage. And if you know that and you were aware of like, okay, my baby was last up at noon and now it's like 12:45 and they're starting to get fussy, that means your baby is starting to get tired again and is ready to go back to sleep. And this is why like skin to skin and baby wearing and nursing to sleep is so great, because it just encourages them to sleep when they need to sleep, when they want to. It also encourages them to link their sleep cycles. So it means when they come into light sleep, if you're walking around in the carrier, it'll bounce them and they'll just kind of go back into sleep. If you're nursing and they fall asleep on the breast and they just kind of nurse right by your breast and then they fall asleep and then they wake up and then you like give them the breast again and then they like go back down to sleep, it helps them to go back into sleep and get the sleep that they need to get so that they're not overtired at the end of the day. This is why nursing to sleep in the beginning and baby wearing and letting them sleep in the carrier is so great, because when your baby goes to bed at nighttime, if they didn't get all the naps that they need during the day, they're probably going to be overtired, and that is going to set you up for a whole night that's much more challenging. So a great way to get your baby to sleep better at night is to get them to sleep more during the day. You think like if you don't sleep very much, you'll be tired and you'll sleep better. That's not true for kids. It is for adults, but it's not for kids. If your kids or your babies get overtired, then they're going to sleep worse. So more sleep equals more sleep, basically. So overtiredness typically happens if the baby isn't receiving a lot of touch or holding. So if we're just like, I don't know, it's like my mom's generation, right? Like to just put the baby in the crib all the time. The baby just is like lying there in the crib. They're lying on the floor. We have the babies just lying on their back a lot. And in our generation now, it's much more common. I don't know what age you are, but, at this day and age, it's much more common for parents to be supported with baby wearing and for nursing to sleep to be like more normal, and breastfeeding, there's a lot more support with it. So I find that like that approach is normalizing more, which is really nice. Babies will sleep better if you're holding them and soothing them more. And that all is supporting their neurological development. All that closeness and holding is very, very good for them. It's literally impossible to spoil your baby. You're creating a neurological network foundation of the rest of their life of like safety and interdependence. So if your baby becomes tired and they're just lying down, they might like not have the support to fall asleep because they haven't really learned how to fall asleep on their own yet. And they need help getting to sleep in the beginning. And that is what can lead to overtiredness. So like I mentioned before, their body releases cortisol and stress hormones, and that's what like really can lead to it. So the signs of an overtired baby is increased fussiness. So if they're crying inconsolably, it's like really hard to soothe them. It's really hard to get them to fall asleep. Like maybe what you did before that usually works. Let's say it's like bouncing on the yoga ball. And that works really well to get them to sleep. Typically, it's like not working and they're fighting it. They might fall asleep and then wake back up and fall asleep and wake back up. They'll have either short naps or short like sleep cycles, which basically means that instead of you put them down and then they sleep for a couple hours or something, at nighttime they'll wake up like every 20 or 30 minutes, and they'll have like jerky movements, like rubbing their eyes and pulling their ears, flailing their arms and legs, things like that. So we talked about like if babies are too long awake, that can cause overtiredness. Overstimulation can cause it too. So this is why it's just really nice, like for the new postpartum phase, to stay at home as much as you can and try to have like a more calm environment for you and your baby. So you both can just relax and listen to baby's cues and you can heal. Going out and running around and doing a bunch of stuff can often, like too early, isn't good for your healing postpartum, but also totally adds to the overstimulation. Sometimes we can also miss sleep cues. So you might just like not really be paying attention. And then your baby is like yawning, rubbing their eyes and pulling at their ears and doing these things to show you that they're tired, but we're kind of missing it. And then if we're not breastfeeding or we're not like carrying them in the carrier, we're just kind of sitting around, they might just be like looking at toys and, they're interested in what's happening and they start to tell you that they're tired and maybe you miss that. And then now we kind of get into like the overtired place. So if you are going to be not like, nursing on demand all the time, or you're like not baby wearing for a little while, like let's say you're just going to sit around in the yard, hang out with other moms and babies or something, and your baby's like been awake and you're talking to other moms, and then all of a sudden your baby's like really fussy, you might check back in on like, okay, when did you take your last nap? Like, oh, or when did you wake up from your last nap? Oh, it's been an hour and a half. Oh my gosh, like I bet you're really tired. So just kind of being aware of their wake windows can be really helpful if you're like kind of out doing things. Yeah. And so undertiredness is the other thing that can happen. So your baby can be overtired. So you miss the like window, and they're rubbing their eyes and they're pulling their ears and you're not noticing. And then they're like overtired. Undertired means your baby doesn't have enough sleep pressure yet to help them go to sleep. So if you try to put them to bed at nighttime before they're really tired enough, like let's say that their last nap was like 6 p.m. and you want to put your baby to bed at 7 p.m. They have to have a long enough wake window before going to sleep at night before they're going to be able to fall asleep. So if they wake up at like 6:30, 6:45 p.m. and then you're like, okay, time for a bedtime routine, and we do it, and then 45 minutes later, we're trying to get you to bed, the baby's undertired. They're not going to be interested in falling asleep. And so we might need to adjust the baby's schedule so that they have enough of a wake window that's normal after their last nap, so that they can build that sleep pressure and go to sleep at a good time. And for any stage, like I have a schedule of like, or I think an illustration of wake windows in the academy. The newborn sleep blueprint covers a lot of what I'm teaching, but you can also just Google like, what would a normal routine be for my 4-month-old, 5-month-old, 6-month-old? And Google will kind of give you a little bit of an outline. That might be different for your baby depending on your guys' normal routine, but that's kind of helpful just to get a little outline. An undertired baby takes a really long time to fall asleep. They also will normally wake after one sleep cycle. They're like happy but awake. So like this is when people say like, I'm trying to get my baby down and they're just wide awake and babbling and talking. It probably just means that they aren't tired. They might like wake frequently, but they're not really that upset. An overtired baby is really upset. So that's kind of the difference between the two. And you're not going to be perfect at figuring out what the problem is, but I think it's really good to just know baby could be undertired and baby can be overtired. And so if you're like, what's going on? You can kind of explore like, what are the signs of this one and that one? So undertiredness would be like you have short wake windows. There's not enough activity. So sometimes if the baby didn't get a lot of like enough stimulation, if they're just lying in their crib all day staring at the ceiling, that's not like biologically normal. From an evolutionary perspective, like our ancestors didn't just put their babies in the crib and let them stare at the ceiling all day. Like they carried them on their body and they like went back to doing what they were doing during the day. And the babies were just with the parents, whatever we're doing. And so if we just like kind of bring our baby into our lives and let them just be part of whatever you're doing that brings you joy, that will give your baby the stimulation and the activity that they need to feel like they got what they needed to then later and go to sleep. Yeah, if you give your baby too many naps or naps too close to bedtime, like I mentioned before, that can also cause undertiredness. So let's talk about age-appropriate wake windows. So I've mentioned wake windows a few times before. What is a wake window? A wake window is when your baby wakes up from a nap and now they're awake, and they're going to be awake for X amount of time until it's around the time that they'll be ready to go back to sleep again. So 45 to 60 minutes in the first 6 weeks, that's a normal wake window. And it's very close. So that means if your baby wakes up and then 45 minutes later they start getting grumpy and you're like, are you hungry? Do you need a diaper change? What is it? And you know, oh, you woke up 45 minutes ago. You're probably tired again. That's really, really helpful to be aware of to kind of help you solve problems when babies are fussy. And if you don't know that they're tired and you try all these things and they don't want the bottle or the breast, they don't want this or that, but then you remember and maybe I won't do that example. So let's say you don't remember, you're trying all these things and then baby can start getting overtired and then they're really fussy. And so this is just like, it will save you so much trouble to know this. At 6 to 12 weeks, their wake window is 60 to 90 minutes, and 3 to 4 months, it's 75 minutes to 120 minutes. So you can always like type in Google, my baby's 2 months old, what's their wake window? So you don't have to memorize all of that. So the sleep cues that your baby will give you are yawning, kind of staring off or zoning out, rubbing their eyes, or being a little bit fussy, not like really crying, but they might just show you that they're a little grumpy. They might pull at their ears a little bit. Usually if they're like pulling at their ears or like doing jerky movements, they're a little bit more upset. And so they're kind of like teetering into like it's getting a little bit late, and I would like rush that baby to sleep however you can. The late sleep cues means the baby is crying or arching their back. They're turning away from you. Their body is rigid. Their fists are clenched and they're making like jerky movements. So if a baby has a late sleep cue, you might just have to recognize like, okay, the baby is really upset because they're overtired and I just need to do what I need to do to get them to go to sleep. If it's during the day, a good way to get a baby who is overtired to sleep is probably going to be giving them as much contact as possible and movement. So putting them in the carrier and bouncing up and down on the yoga ball while you put in a show on with your headphones, or something like that. Or like walking them around, kind of bouncing up and down in the carrier. And you might have to continue that movement to keep them asleep because they might fall asleep and then want to wake up. So if an overtired baby's having a hard time falling asleep for a nap, getting them to take that nap, the way to cure it is to get them to take the nap and get them to sleep for as long as humanly possible. And so in that case, like what I found as a mom to be really effective is like the carrier. Babies sleep so well often in the carrier, and the continuous motion can really help them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about nursing to sleep next. So like I mentioned before, nursing to sleep is biologically normal. Your body releases sleep hormones. It supports bonding, and it also provides comfort. So babies nurse for more than just food. They also nurse for bonding, they nurse for connection, they nurse for comfort, and all of that is normal and totally okay. Nursing to sleep generally will help your baby sleep easier, which is nice. They'll often have fewer night wakings because there are bioactive components in the milk that help regulate circadian rhythms, which is so cool. Essential fatty acids and hormones can support brain development, and it's often easier for parents to nurse babies to sleep. So like letting your baby fall asleep on the breast or with a bottle in the beginning of their life is totally okay. The next one is carrying to sleep. So I just mentioned this a little bit before, but let's go into it a little bit more. So baby wearing is so good for your baby. It's well researched. It's like one of the best things that you can do to support nervous system regulation, and also to help your baby get good sleep throughout the day. So sleep enhancing hormones can be released when you're baby wearing, like oxytocin. For nervous system regulation, the closeness helps your baby feel safe and calm through co-regulation. It mimics constant motion sensation and the warmth of the womb too. And it also frees up your hands. Halla freaking Luya. You guys, nothing is better than being a mom and putting your baby in a carrier and just having your hands back and you can like do stuff. It's so good. It's so good. I'm a big fan. You want to have like, I'm just going to say, probably 2 really good carriers. If you're going to buy anything, buy a good carrier. That's like all you really need. I feel like you need diapers and a good carrier for a baby. And I would get a wrap carrier. There's a million different carriers. The carriers that I loved were the boba carrier. It's like a wrap carrier. And that one had the really stretchy fabric and I just really loved it. I tried the Solly and other ones and the boba was just the best fabric. And the other one was the Ergo Baby 360. That one's not for newborns. I think Ergo Baby probably has a newborn one too. The Ergo Baby 360, I think my baby had to be like 3 months old or something, like a little older for that one. But like having a buckle carrier and a cloth carrier is great. Your baby might throw up, like they might spit up a lot of milk, or sometimes babies will overeat and they'll like throw up all their milk. They can have blowouts. So it's good to have 2 carriers because if you need a carrier for a nap and then one gets covered in poop, you want to back up. Okay, more baby wearing benefits. Reduces overtiredness. It supports digestion, having your baby upright. The secure attachment fosters emotional regulation and future independence. So that's what I was talking about. Like we're creating a foundation for future independence by being interdependent and helping your baby co-regulate with you at the beginning. It helps links your baby's sleep cycles. So when your baby goes into a light sleep stage and they maybe are like kind of wanting to wake up from sleep, if you're just kind of moving around in the carrier, that will rock them back into a deeper sleep. So they will hopefully sleep better and take more sleep, have like more naps under their belt by the time you get to bedtime, which can lead to an easier bedtime. Flat head syndrome is something that can happen with babies when they're lying on their back. They're already going to be lying on their back all night. So we want to avoid having them lying on their back like for hours and hours and hours throughout the day, you know? And also babies cry less and they settle more quickly when we're baby wearing. So I will say that when it comes to the 3 or 4 month window or whenever you want to sleep train your baby, you can continue to wear your baby to sleep in naps in the carrier. Sometimes, this is more rare, but sometimes babies can have sleep associations to like being in the carrier and they want the carrier to help them to sleep and that can impact their independent sleep. So let's say this is rare, so it doesn't happen for everyone. Like a lot of babies will be fine with you like wearing them to sleep in the carrier during the day and at nighttime they'll go down normally in their crib and they'll sleep in the crib or they'll sleep in the bed with you or whatever all night and it's fine. But some babies will get a little confused if you're letting them nap in the carrier during the day. That might impact their ability to sleep at night, or maybe sleeping at night is fine because there's all this sleep pressure and maybe it doesn't really impact them because there's enough sleep pressure to kind of override that association. But perhaps trying to put them down for a nap during the day is like really hard. And they just really want the carrier during the day and it's impacting their ability to do independent naps during the day. So you kind of have to just see what your baby is doing and like how your baby responds because every baby is really, really different. So play around with it. If you feel like it's not like I can wear my baby during the day for naps and at nighttime my baby kids is sleeping well in their own sleep space and we're not having an association issue, then like keep doing that. But if you're like, I really need my baby to do independent naps for whatever reason during the day, if I baby wear sometimes in the carrier, it really messes it up, then maybe we need to stop sleeping in the carrier for that baby specifically. So sensitivity, it's important to be aware of this because every single baby is just so different. So that's really helpful to know beforehand. If you notice like there's an issue, just like look into what your baby's doing to sleep at other times and see if maybe there's an association happening. Okay. So next, let's talk about bed sharing. I could not find like any good stock photos of safe sleep with bed sharing. So this is the best photo I have. It's very, very hard to find any photos actually online of like safe sleep. All the pictures, if you look up like baby in a crib, it's like with stuffed animals and blankets and all this stuff that's like really alarming and really unsafe. So Anyway, when it comes to bed sharing, it's generally discouraged in the United States, but there are other countries in the world where it's recommended, and there are comprehensive safety guidelines and education around how to do it. So the problem with the way that the US, and I believe, approaches like culturally bed sharing is that everyone says don't like bed share with your baby, but I guess I'll say, and then parents don't learn how to safely do it. And we have research that shows that almost everyone, like over 90% of parents, will fall asleep with their baby at some point in their parenting journey, often on accident. And so it's very clear that, like, okay, most people do end up falling asleep with their baby. The problem now is that since we've discouraged it and say, like, it's a bad thing, you shouldn't do it, now parents don't know how to do it safely. So everyone should learn how to safely bed share with their baby, even if you're not planning to, because there might come a time where you feel like I need to fall asleep with my baby right now, or I'm getting really sleepy, but I need to keep nursing and I'm alone or whatever. And it's like, okay, well then let's figure out a way that you could do that safely. So we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about a few quick benefits too to bed sharing. So I'll just say it's nice to just side lie with your baby, and then they wake up at night and they just latch onto your nipple and you nurse them and they go back to sleep. That's really nice. Like the closeness and connection feel good. It's nice to, like I said, not have to get up for every feeding. So there are definitely benefits to bed sharing, and I loved it. I did it with all 3 of my kids, but I will say that not everyone is a good fit. So let's kind of go over some of the safety guidelines. And the first one I'll say here is that if you have a sleep disorder. Actually, I think there's a list. Here it is. If you have a sleep disorder, you shouldn't do it. If you take cannabis or alcohol or even Tylenol PM, a sleep medication, anything like that to send you into sleep, then it is not okay for you to bed share in that circumstance. Or if one of the parents in the bed, any adult in the bed should not have a sleep disorder, should not be taking any substances to go to sleep. Then you would want to be sleeping. La Leche League recommends the cuddle curl position, and I agree with this. And there's a little picture, I think, on the next slide. Did I put a picture? Yeah, there's a picture. So we'll talk about that in a second. We'll break it down. You want to have a clear sleep space, no pillows, no blankets around the baby, no stuffed animals. We want baby to be on a firm mattress. So we don't want, if your bed is squishy and if you put the baby on the bed and you're on the bed, the baby rolls onto their belly because your bed is so squishy, it's probably not safe. And we don't want you to bring in any positioning devices into your bed. So no wedges, no to prop the baby up, nothing, just a flat surface. So if you want a blanket, you'd put your baby on the blanket, you would get under the blanket. Does that make sense? So no blanket can get on top of the baby. The baby's on the blanket, the baby's wearing their own wearable blanket. That's how I did it with all of my kids. And you have instincts not to roll over your baby. You do. And if you don't have a sleep disorder or you're not taking substances or things that can impact that, it's our ancestors slept with their babies. It's a fairly recent in human history, this idea that we need to sleep separately from our babies. And we learned that when babies are in a different room than us, their risk for SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, is higher compared to when they're in the room with us. And that was actually very recent that the AAP recommended that we start bringing our babies into the room. So things change, and over time the culture changes. So I talked about putting the baby on the blanket. It's just really, really important that we aren't letting anything get on top of the baby. If the blanket is over you, it will be over your chest and up to your armpit, but you wouldn't put it over your shoulder. So you might have to sleep with a robe or something to kind of cover your shoulder. That's what I figured out how to do, or just keep the house warmer. My husband wants it to be cool at night, and I was like, sucks to be you, but baby and mom in the room, I can't put the blanket all the way up over me because I don't want it to fall over onto the baby. So the room's gonna be warm, and you're gonna have to be okay with it. And he was like, it's fine, I'll be okay with it. So yeah, we're prioritizing the temperature of mom and baby. Okay, here is an example of the cuddle curl position. So the birth parent is lying, or the parent who's sleeping with the baby, which is usually the parent who's feeding the baby. They're going to be sleeping on their side with their knees bent. So you can put a pillow between your knees. The baby is going to be placed on their back, right, like under your armpit or in alignment with your nipple. They could also turn to their side to nurse, and that's okay too. I would probably get a pillow and put a pillow behind your back, and you could kind of lie your arm on that pillow behind your back, or you could lie your arm like on your side, but the pillow behind your back will just kind of help prop you up. And then you want to take a pillow, like she doesn't have a pillow under her head, but you can just put a pillow under your head and then tuck it under like kind of tuck it back a little bit. So your arm is underneath the pillow, if that kind of makes sense. And the baby's down lower. So if the pillow were to, it's kind of hard for a pillow to scooch to the side if you're like actually holding it between your arm and your head. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyway, I feel like that is a good explanation. It's kind of hard to show you just in a picture, but in the course, the Newborn Sleep Blueprint, just click on the breastfeeding lesson, and there should be, I remember putting some video footage of me doing like bed sharing and kind of showing you. Anyway, La Leche League shares that bed sharing is safer for breastfeeding parents, but it's safe for all parents to do. It's like a very safe position to be in to nurse your baby at nighttime. I will say that some babies, when they are really, really, really little and you're trying to like nurse your baby with a side lying position, sometimes they can kind of plug their nose, your breast, like up on their nose. And all you really need to do is just readjust the baby, just like push them down a little bit and have them come up to the side on an angle. And maybe after this, I'll like close it down. I'll turn on my camera and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But that is usually how you fix that. And so additional safety tips, I would probably have your baby, like you are in the middle of the bed. If you have a partner, your baby is on the other side of the bed, like with you. And then there's probably like a bumper. You could buy a bumper on Amazon for pretty cheap. Or maybe not Amazon because Amazon's evil, but somewhere online. And a bumper is like a little gate that can go at the edge of your bed. Even though your baby isn't in a newborn phase, isn't going to roll. At some point they'll be old enough to roll. And if they're going to stay in your bed for a while, I think it's good to have that there. So anyway, if you're not planning to bed share, the reason why I'm teaching you this is because, let's just go over this real quick example. If you are nursing on the rocking chair or on the couch and you're feeling very sleepy and you're like, I am totally going to fall asleep, I'm so sleepy, would it be safer for you to just try your best to stay awake, right? Even though you're feeling like you're going to fall asleep, or just getting into a safe sleep position with your baby in your bed and letting yourself drift off? Right? Because if you accidentally fell asleep, your baby fell off of your arm, they could like get wedged in the couch or on the rocking chair. And that is what increases the risk for sudden infant death syndrome. So if you're feeling like I'm so exhausted, I don't have any support, and I feel like I cannot stay awake, it would be safer to get into a safe sleep situation with your baby where you can actually fall asleep, instead of like lying to yourself about like, I'm not going to fall asleep, because sometimes we just do when we're so exhausted. So it's good to know about that. And some alternatives for sleeping are like, once again, AAP says if you can have your baby in your room for the first 6 months or a year, that would be great. Some other options are the side sleeper right here, which I had for my, honestly, first, second, and third. I had a different side sleeper. I ended up getting different ones for each baby, and it just became a expensive laundry basket each time. But I did like the fact that it was there, and I did use it like twice in their whole life. But it was like, there were a couple nights where I was really touched out and I was like, you will be sleeping somewhere else. So it felt good to have a different place to put the baby. Cribs, they're more expensive, but they last longer. They can convert sometimes into toddler beds, which is rad. I got like one of those. That's why I got one for my third. Like I got another one because like the one I got converted into a crib, and now my 2-year-old's in that one. So when I was pregnant, I needed to get another one. And then bassinet. Here's like kind of a little picture. That's not the best bassinet, but I couldn't find many good pictures. But this one is like a side sleeper that attaches to your bed. This is a bassinet that's freestanding, so it can go like wherever, and it can travel. Sometimes some of them can't travel. Um, okay, let's talk about keeping your baby safe when your baby is sleeping. So we talked about a firm, flat mattress. We want a clean sleep area, a tight fitted sheet, and no reclined sleepers. So we don't want your baby to like lounge, like reclining in something that rocks or whatever, because lounging back can cause their chin to tilt forward and that can restrict their airway. We want your baby to always be on their back when they're sleeping, and we want to try to keep a comfortable temperature, so like 68 to 72 degrees. We have a wood burning stove and my house is warmed that way, so we cannot just hit a thermostat, but we do our best. You also can experiment with like what the baby's wearing with the sleep suit, and some are warmer and some are like more cooling, like I mentioned before. So we want to avoid your baby overheating. Drop side cribs have been banned due to safety risks. Recalled products, sometimes things are out and then they're recalled. So it's good to just kind of like be aware of that. And like I said, no sitting devices. So if your baby fell asleep in the car seat, that's okay. But when you get home, we don't want to keep them asleep in the car seat. It's recommended to take the baby out and transfer them somewhere else to a safe place. That's like, I'm just like saying what's recommended. I'm sorry. I know that's like kind of unfortunate because you might like finally get the baby to sleep and you want them to just stay asleep in there, but it's not recommended to keep them asleep. What I did, like if I was going out on the town to get groceries or whatever, because that's all I really did when I had children, is I would pull up babies asleep in the where do they sleep in? The car seat. I'd put on the carrier. I'd take them out of the car seat. They'd be like, what the heck, Mom? I'm so mad about the fact that you're like, what, and they'll be a little grumpy. I just put them in the carrier and I'll start moving at the grocery store and they'll be like, "Meow, meow, meow," and they'll just kind of get themselves back to sleep. So we just transfer into the carrier and then they can finish out the nap in the carrier. Okay. Temperature regulation. We talked about that. There's lots of ways that babies can lose heat. And it's mostly from like being wet, from like right after they're born, or if they like get sweaty and then like they're wet and now that's like causing them to like lose heat. So you just want to like make sure that your baby's a good temperature, but I don't think I need to go through that. Maybe I will just say like oral temperatures, are okay, but kind of hard to do for a baby. Like the auxiliary, the armpit, you could do that if you want. But really, if you want to know if your baby has a fever, you'd have to do rectal. That's like the most accurate. And if you're just trying to figure out like, is my baby too hot or too cold at night, then you could just do one of those forehead ones. A normal temperature range is 97 to 100.4. So if they're 100.4 or below and you're like, oh my God, they're 100, they have a fever, it might mean that they're actually just hot. So try cooling them down first by taking off a layer or something like that, or opening a window, and then take their temperature again. So let's talk about, and we're almost done. We just have a few more slides. I just want to talk about a few like nighttime support strategies. So when your baby is waking up at nighttime and they're like, I want you to soothe me back to sleep, or I want to nurse, or whatever it is. Like there's lots of different things that you can do to kind of help you both navigate that. So there's not one right way for everyone, and you just have to figure out a routine that works better for you both. It works for you both. And I will say, if the parent that is working has to go to work, they still need to help with the baby at night, because if you're staying at home with the baby, you have to work still with the baby. So you both need to pitch in. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. I'll also say that people who give birth need more sleep, and also women need more sleep, right? Like we need more sleep than men. So, my husband and I have this rule, like I mentioned before. I gave birth, you get up with the babies. And that's what it is. And it works really well. It's excellent. And I really need that sleep after having 3 children. And not at the beginning, like the beginning I was breastfeeding and we were doing that together. But now that I'm not breastfeeding, and my kids sleep through the night almost every night, but like if they do wake up, he gets up with them. So just wanted to plant that seed. One option is that you guys can alternate full nights if the parent is pumping. You would have to still wake up to pump, but you would just have to pump a little bit and then hand the milk over and go back to sleep. Another option is that you could shift half nights. So one person covers 8 to 2, the other person covers 2 to 8. You could have both parents wake, which is what my husband and I did. It just kind of worked for us. What that meant was like, the baby cries, I wake up and realized, okay, the baby's ready for a feed. I give the baby to my husband. This is also really in the first 6 weeks. I need a lot more feeds and a lot more diaper changes, and it'll be much less typically after 6 weeks, but it's like every 2 to 3 hours for the first 6 weeks at least. So he'll get up with the baby, he'll change the baby. I'll like drink my protein shake that I had made because like I was hungry breastfeeding at night. I would like drink it. I would go to the bathroom and change my pad because I just gave birth, get back in bed, get cozy. He'd hand me the baby and I would nurse the baby back to sleep and we'd just go back to sleep. Or I would nurse the baby and then I would burp him and then I would give him just a little more little tiny top off of my nipple just so that for like a minute so he could just like fall asleep on it, but not to where he's getting a lot to where he needs to burp. And then you could also just rotate wake ups where like it's yours and then mine and then yours and then mine. Yeah, there's lots of options. You can always post in the community if you're like, what do I do? And see if other parents have anything to share. Because, not one approach is the right approach. We just kind of have to try different things out. Okay, so our last slide is on feeding approaches. So there's a difference between like baby led feeding and schedule feeding. And this like ties into sleep and night because some people are told you have to set an alarm every 2 hours and wake up every 2 hours and feed your baby. You don't have to do that. If your baby doesn't have low blood sugar, doesn't have jaundice, or weight loss or anything like that, then, babies will let us know when they are hungry. And typically it's safe to allow our babies to do baby-led feeding, which means that your baby will tell you when they're hungry and they'll wake up and let you know. But if there is any kind of medical need for your baby to like have a closer eye, for us to have a closer eye on their intake, like jaundice or low blood sugar or weight loss or inadequate output, like if they don't have enough wet diapers, then like, yes, we need to set alarms. And there's nothing wrong with setting alarms if you want to do that. But if it just feels easier for you and like you're getting more sleep, to be able to just let your baby let you know, then that's okay to do too. Some parents, like what they'll do is they'll just kind of schedule it for the first few days, just making sure that like everything's going okay. The baby, is like peeing and like pooping as they should, and then they'll kind of stop. I never scheduled for my kids until my third had jaundice, and then I set an alarm for every hour and I supplemented him. In addition to nursing, I breast pumped into a cup and I spoon fed him extra supplementation on top of what he fed every hour for 24 hours. And then the jaundice was better and we went back to our regular stuff. So anyway, and I'll just show you if you have experienced this, or maybe you will experience this. And I think it's helpful to just be aware of this one trick. So that is, I would take my nipple and instead of like if we're side lying, so imagine that you're lying on a bed and here's your nipple and here's the baby. If you do this, the baby could, maybe you notice like it's not breathing through their nose very well. So what you could do is tilt your baby like this at an angle and then bring your baby up like that. And when the baby's tilted at an angle and then they come up like this, it just like opens up that area on top of their nose. Instead of them coming on this way, they're coming on this way. So if you are sideline nursing and you're noticing that that is happening, I would try that. And typically that problem, it doesn't happen for everyone. It did happen with me with one of my babies. And I have another mom who told me that happened to her. So just kind of be aware that that's something you can do. Anyway, this was so fun. Thanks so much for being part of our training today. If you have any questions, you're welcome to post in the community. If you are postpartum now, you're thinking about like preparing for postpartum, if you want any support, we can book a free birth breakthrough session with me. My coaching program extends through postpartum and it's as long as you need. I see one of my moms here. So it's like, I'm here with you forever to support you anytime if you have questions come up, and there's like a group coaching call for postpartum where we all kind of get together and connect, and I can help you with baby feeding and sleep and all that kind of stuff. So yay. Okay, everyone, have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.